Good morning, boreda, bonjour, buongiorno, g'day. Welcome, one and all. My name is Donato, and welcome to our latest podcast. It's Thursday, the 5th of December, when this is being recorded, just for the record, so you know when this is happening. And we've got a very special guest on today. Someone who's from a background that we've not had before on the show. And because this person was an ex-professional cyclist, that's right, who's taken up running later on in life and is now an England Masters runner. So I thought, let's get him on the show and we'll talk about how we've gone from a beginner runner and getting back to basics from being a professional cyclist. But also, there's a lot of things that we're going to be covering. So be sure to watch all the way through, because we'll be talking about chocolate, drugs, and rock and roll. So without further ado, let's bring on Philip Cooper.
Hi, thanks for having us on.
Welcome to the show. No, it's my pleasure, and thank you for taking the time to come in on the show, as we say. So yes, running, ex-professional cyclist. So a lot of people, apart from Googling your name, Philip Cooper, and they'll find out about you. But can you give us a quick intro about yourself, background, professional cyclist, how, and then we'll talk more about the running as we go into that. So tell me, Phil.
Yeah, so I used to race cross-country mountain biking, which back in the day, I mean, I'm 48 now, so it was between 1999 and about 2005, I raced mountain bike World Cups, which at the time weren't that as big as they are now. I don't know if you know much about it now, but there's a guy, Tom Pidcock, who's won. Oh, yes. He's won the last couple
Olympic gold medalist, isn't he? Yeah.
And it's kind of made mountain biking, it's a lot more popular now. And well known, so you get a lot of the top road guys like him and Matthias van der Poel, and quite a few of the top kind of cyclocross riders do it. And so it's a lot more well known. Whereas back in the day, it was smaller. So around 2002, I think I did my first World Cup in Madrid. Raced all around Europe, Canada. And my best result was 57th in a World Cup, which at the time, it doesn't sound that great, but when it's elite racing, men's, and it's an Olympic sport, I think in that race I was the third place British rider, right? And that was the year before Athens. So there was 2 Olympic spots that Great Britain had, and my best ranking was 7th in the UK rankings. Had quite a few kind of top 10s in British nationals, 7th, 8th, 9th, but never got better than 7th. And there was 2 Olympic spots. I got 2nd in the Irish national championships. And if I could have found an Irish passport, my UCI points at the time, Ireland had 1 Olympic spot. The Olympic spots were done on world ranking points. And at the time, I think I was ranked about 111th in the UCI world rankings. And those points, I was scratched around for a while trying to find some kind of Irish heritage and couldn't find any. So I didn't go to the Olympics, and you end up going down in history books as a bike bum.
A bike bum?
Well, I always used to say at the time that kind of if you go to the Olympics, and I guess at the Masters thing at the weekend, chatting to that Kerry Maddox, if you go to the Olympics, you're kind of a hero forever. But if you don't, then I guess the outside of sport, people have a lot of respect, don't they, for Olympians? So, and if you don't,
you were that close to the Olympics. All you needed was that Irish passport, and you would have been.
Yeah, I mean, and you say close. I think, like I said to you in my bio, there's probably about. The guys in front of me, there's probably about 5 or 6 British guys who I never beat. So it's fair enough. You can't moan. But I mean, when you do, I did end up going out to Athens actually. So I was good friends with a few of the Irish guys and went out with them. Jenny qualified for the Olympics in Athens, and you're watching the mountain bike race, and probably half the field I'd beaten in that World Cup before. But again, in those times, it's probably the same now, that there was two Olympic spots for each nation. So you'd have kind of 2 Japanese, 2 kind of South American countries, and on the world scene they weren't probably quite as strong. So the kind of depth in the Olympics wasn't the same as a World Cup. A World Cup would just be world rankings and who was best. So in a World Cup you might have 40 kind of French and Italian guys who were absolutely top professionals. But again, France and Italy might only have 3 Olympic spots. So yeah, kind of half the field in the Olympics you would have beaten the week before, but fair play. It's just the kind of way it goes, the ranking and the qualifications and stuff like that.
Exactly. When you mentioned Tom Pidcock, I mean, obviously the guy I think started apologies if I get the terminologies wrong. Cyclocross, cross country, mountain biking. I think he was a mountain biker. Now he's in the professional road team for into cycling Tour de France, winning stages in the Tour de France.
Yeah, he's doing well.
Yeah, I mean, would you say that's quite a rare thing, having someone who can transition between different types? I guess it'd be like cross-country runner and a road runner or a trail runner.
I think back in the day, so when I was racing, there was quite a crossover. I think it's the same kind of engine. I mean, maybe with stage racing, it's slightly different because the mountain bike races be similar to a single day. In cycling, you have single day races and stage races and stuff like the Tour de France. They're kind of 3-week stage races where probably this part of the skill is the nutrition and being strong every day and recovering every day and being able to race every day, day after day for 3 weeks. Whereas the single day races probably do equate more to a kind of marathon that it's all about getting it all out in one day. So, I mean, if you look at Pidcock, I think he's won this year quite a few of the kind of one-day classics. It may be a slightly different skill set to transition to those stage races, but obviously he's got the engine, and I think we were just chatting about this today. Actually, he's probably one of the top kind of 5 riders in the world at the moment. So good luck to him. I think he's just left Ineos. Actually, it was in the news yesterday. So
right. So quite topical.
Yeah, he's going to be riding for a different team next year. But yeah, I guess when you watch him win the Olympics, and I guess that when I was racing, there's people, the guys in my era that went to the Olympics. You look at Pidcock now and you think fair play to him. He's kind of done whatever all of us would have ever wanted to achieve.
Absolutely. I think just as you say, thing at the professional level, elite level, it's so tough out there to get, from whether it's 50th or 100th or top 2. And, only this morning I happened to bump into a Paris gold Olympian. And as you say, she's an MBE current Olympian, not in cycling, by the way, but in a completely different sport. And it is a fine line. And I guess the question that a lot of people might be asking, Phil, is, so you all those years, 1999, 2005, even up to, I think you mentioned 2015, you were doing a lot of cycling. What made you transition to running?
I guess for me, it was getting the same. I kind of have this theory with sports people that you're kind of addicted to the endorphins and the dopamine, and maybe you get a quicker hit. I think probably a 20-minute run is equivalent to an hour bike ride. You probably have to go out on the bike. You probably have to lever yourself on the bike for an hour to get the same kind of hit you do out of a 20-minute run. So for me, it was initially that, just going out just so you can go and knock your pipe out. And I think I saw a thing a little while ago, actually, and it was saying that when you're exercising hard, because you're putting yourself into so much pain, your body's releasing these chemicals as kind of a natural painkiller, like the endorphins and the dopamines. And then when you stop, because you can instantly stop training or end the race, the pain instantly goes away and you're just left with those feel-good chemicals. So in a way, you are kind of, I think maybe you are addicted to those chemicals.
Wow. It's just one of these, as I say, normally a lot of people, I have seen other friends who, not professional cyclists like yourself, but doing a lot of cycling, jump into the running, pun intended, because their time is less limited. Did you find that, to get the exercise and the benefits, that you'd have to be out for hours and hours on the bike, whereas a quick 20-minute, 40-minute run gives you the same, as you say, endorphins, fitness?
There's a couple of things as well. I think maybe it's been quite nice. I think I mentioned this to you at the weekend, of switching to a new sport. I think if I was still cycling, you'd be getting slower and slower and worse, and all your personal worsts every month, and you'd be going to races remembering how you used to feel. And whereas with the running, where it's new to me, everything's a personal best. I think every time I raced over the last year, it's been a personal PB every time. And you're learning new skills, everything's new, and you're getting better. And again, so in a way, it's almost like being young again.
Yeah, I like that analogy. Yeah, so starting again.
Yeah, I know. Some of the context, some of the chat at the Masters thing at the weekend, wasn't it? It was about how your body's getting worse and how you're getting older, and things are going to get worse. You're going to get slower, and I'm like, no, not for me. You know, if it's something new, it's all new. I'm getting quicker every month. So
yeah, because a lot of people I've heard, you know, we talk about the age thing, and I know a lot of masters or people 35 and beyond, shall we say, will be watching this channel. Sometimes the common thread is that running can be bad for us. It smashes up our knees, ankles, and sorts, and people transition the other way from running to cycling so that they're not smashing up their knees and ankles. What are your views on that, Phil?
It's definitely less impact on your body. For me, getting into running, it's quite a learning curve with the injuries and the strength training and conditioning your body and your structures to be able to take that pounding. You never had that on the bike. You don't. I don't think as a cyclist you have to take that as seriously. The kind of strength training. So yeah, that's one of the kind of learning curves for me. I can't remember your question now. I've gone off.
No, it was when people transitioning the other way, they tend to go from running. If they've been running for 10, 20, 30 years, when they get into their 40s, 50s, they then transition backwards to cycling.
It makes me wonder as well. I think this may be my prediction for the future, in that where running is so hard on your body, I wonder whether the future of running will be some kind of cross training slightly. In that, if you can, maybe with running a limited, because of the pounding on your body. So maybe if people can get to a limit of 100 miles a week or whatever, if you're a top pro, 200 miles a week, some of the top guys. But then almost, if you could still go out, if they could go out in the afternoon for 2 hours on the bike, they could have another 2 hours hard training, and it wouldn't really add much more strain to their legs.
Yeah.
So I just wonder whether there'd be a bit of an opportunity there to, maybe cross train a little bit more in the future. And for me at the moment, where I'm new to running, I'm hardly doing any running miles. And a lot of my fitness last year is still coming from the bike. I'm still training a lot on the bike. And I think you get that kind of steady state mitochondria kind of adaptations. It's just a kind of inbuilt chronic fitness into you. I do think training is very specific to sports, but like I say, maybe as you get older, just that general conditioning means that when I do start running, doing the intervals running, you get a quicker adaptation.
Yeah. So what does your typical week, then you say about the training you don't do much, what does your typical week look like if we start, say, on a Monday and it's now Thursday?
So with the running,
do you plan your training, what you're going to do on a bike, what you do running, swimming, walking?
So
how do you plan your week?
I'll normally look back, pick some races I want to go well in, and then plan backwards from that. So I get an idea of, I guess that's the good thing as well about racing all those years. I think back in the day, I used to do quite a few kind of 36-hour weeks. So you'd be training a lot. You get used to training a lot.
Wow, 36 hours.
Yeah.
But then we forget that's a professional working week, isn't it?
Yeah, and the ironic thing, so I do some 36 hours a week, and I'm quite glad now that with training diaries and stuff, you've recorded a lot of the details. And then you'd go to a World Cup and get 57th, and people would be like, "Oh, is that good?" And it was like you'd be absolutely having the race of your life. I can remember how strong. I remember how strong you felt. I'm quite keen on kind of heavy volume training and thinking that's the way to get quick. But where I'm new to running, I can't really run that much. So going back over the last year, I think some of my biggest weeks are like 26 miles a week, which is, I think in the club, I'm probably I probably always rank lowest in the weekly mileage. But it's just because I can't take it. Like even now I've got I've had shin splints, and it's quite a learning curve for your body. But I think the first time I ran was last year. So I think I did a park run last April.
And
I don't think I could really walk for a whole week afterwards.
Wow.
When you're totally new to running. Totally,
yeah.
Totally new to
That's
running.
Fascinating, that is.
And it's just
when did you start running? What do you remember? What date was last year you started?
So probably about March last year.
Okay.
And then had a go at the park run in April.
April of this year. Was that your first
April?
park run?
April last year.
Okay.
Did a 20:47, but then, like I say, couldn't walk for about a week afterwards.
But I'm guessing your timing now is mildly quicker. So 20:47 was your first park run in March last year.
Yeah. So then
what it is now.
This year I've run the Essex 5K champs for V45 in 16:23.
Wow. So what date was that?
That was August.
So little over a year, you've gone from just over 20 minutes to just over 16 minutes. That is incredible.
Yeah. Well, wow. Thank you.
And I guess I can see why you're already, as I mentioned in the bio, you're already a county 10K champion, and you already won the Vitality 10K for your age group as well. So these aren't small races, are they? There's some top runners in your county, and obviously the London Vitality does attract some of the best runners in
London Vitality is good.
And you won both of those for your age group.
Yes. So I think in the London Vitality there was 812 V45 runners.
Yeah. And what was your time at the London Vitality?
33:40.
Oof. 33 minutes. Wow.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people in their 20s or 30s would be very proud of, say, a 34 or 35, let alone 33 minutes. So do you feel, and this is going to sound like a daft question, Phil, do you think you're good?
Not at running.
No. That's fascinating, that is, because a lot of people out there who, talk about whatever times were, and everyone feels a different way about what their times are. But so do you feel then you can get better? Do you feel you can get better?
I think so, yeah. Just like I say, I guess I know from the past how much difference it would make. The kind of specificity of training, that if I could get some more hours in running, I think there's a bit more there for me as well. The technique, I look at some of the guys at the club who are the top runners at our club, and just their technique, you'll be training with them. And I'm looking at them thinking they're not going as hard as me because they've got a better technique. I think that you kind of, I've noticed this from cycling as well. When you're around really good cyclists, you can sit behind a really good cyclist and they look so easy. They'll be going so fast and it looks so easy, and they're so efficient with their technique. And it's the same with the running, but probably more so with the running. That I'm running with these guys just thinking, you look more efficient than me. And I think that will come with it's that kind of 10,000 hour rule, isn't it? That
yes.
You put those hours in, and it just becomes your technique. You just become good at it, don't you?
It is all about technique. And interestingly enough, I was talking with some people about because we learn from other people. I think, without offending people who are watching this podcast, that if we keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, that's a bit of a sign of things aren't quite right, shall we say? Yeah. Whereas if you want to change things, you need to change things. So sometimes just the basics of running. So one of my favorite books, and I've literally got it to hand, is this one. I would definitely recommend this, Phil, because in here it talks all about technique.
Yeah.
And so, and I know Shane, and I've worked with him. I had him on the podcast about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And really knows his stuff. But it's getting back to basics. And what you've just said, when you look at better runners, and when I go to a local park run, and I'm volunteering, I can see the difference in technique. The guys who are flying past in 16 minutes are running in a completely different form to the guys doing it in 25 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But then when you look at the effort, the ones who are running in 25 seem to be putting in much more effort than the ones who are gliding at 16. So I guess that's what you mean, is you're running with people and you feel like you're putting more effort into it.
And I think, like you say, like 16:21, and I'm 48, and you've won the Essex champs for that age group, and you should be quite pleased with it. But I think I know the way I'm running, it doesn't feel, I mean, maybe it will never feel great, but I don't feel efficient. I feel like I know how to get fit, and I'm just pounding you're just throwing enough mud at the wall, if that makes sense. That you can pull stuff like that off, but you're not energy efficient, and you haven't got grace about you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But the thing to remember, and obviously this is just as a note, because the day we would have in the Masters training, it was the day of the GB Masters 5K.
Okay.
And obviously for my age group, 60 to 64, I thought, oh, well, let's see, because I know I can't get anywhere near the times these guys run, because a lot of them have been running a lifetime. Do you want to hazard a guess the time at the 60 to 64-year-old one?
Well, I looked at the.
Oh, you did look it up.
I looked at the V45, and they were 15:30. So,
so what was the 60-year-old?
Is it 16:30?
That's correct. Yeah.
So, like you say, you look at it and you think fair play to them.
I'm thinking, holy caramba. Now, I know, again, people might say, and there's all sorts of people out there with gossiping, whatever, but they'll say, oh, the guy's literally turned 60 last week, but it doesn't matter. He's still 60, and fair play. I mean, it's astonishing the times. And, the 65, I mean, I know a guy here in Worcester, I think he's 77, or he's certainly in his 70s, will run a 41-minute 10K. No problem. For someone in their late 70s.
I think I saw a thing a little while ago. I don't know whether there's a guy on YouTube called Peter Attia. He's an American doctor, and he had an interview on there with the guy that's won the Tour de France this year and the World Championships in cycling. It's a guy called Tadej Pogacar.
Yeah, all right.
And his coach was interviewed, and he was talking about adaptations to training. And they were both saying this kind of mitochondria adaptation should be thought of. It's kind of an accumulative effect over your life.
Yes.
And that if you go through life and you never ever let yourself get really out of shape, they kind of think of it, the analogy of it as accumulating wealth.
Yes.
So that as you get up to, I think it was his example was he was the 80-year-old world cycling champion for 80 to 85-year-olds. Wow. And saying they tested him and he was about as fit as he was when he was in his 30s. And it's because he had never let himself get out of shape. And they were saying that the kind of the different energy systems, like your glucose burning and the kind of more anaerobic stuff, you can train with intervals and it's quite short term. So you can take someone with a VO2 max of 20 milliliters per kilogram per minute and train them over a few months up to 30 quite easily. But almost the mitochondria effect was a lot longer lasting, takes a lot longer to get, and it accumulates. So I think a lot of masters athletes, like you say, you get up to 50, 60, 70. If you never ever let yourself get out of shape, it does accumulate. So you can get some really quick 60-year-olds.
Yeah. I mean, I thought people get slower. I mean, you probably heard my question, at what point do people get slower? So I know that the statistics does show the average person will drop quite quickly. Yeah. But there are some top athletes where it's very little dropping.
And I guess if you're 60 and you've never let yourself get out of shape, you are in the minority of people probably anyway, aren't you, because of that?
Exactly.
But
So your schedule, I was going to say, we were digressing in terms of the times. Your schedule of training, do you plan your week ahead? So you say so it was low mileage. Irrespective of mine, what does your training week normally look like?
So be low mileage with the running. I'll try and do as much as I can without getting injured. Yeah. But I'll top it up with quite a bit of cycling. So I think in September, before the London Vitality, me and a buddy of mine went out to northern Spain. And we probably put in about a 29-hour week again on the bike. So you've just got that kind of that fitness. So a good analogy I've never heard anyone say this, but I've always thought this. An analogy for your fitness was your skin. If you go in the sun and get a suntan, that was your body's response to an external stimulus.
Yeah.
And you can go out in the sun. If you haven't trained much, you can go out in the sun when you're young and you've got fair skin and you'll burn. And then you need to let your body adapt to that. But over your lifetime, if you go out in the sun quite a bit, I don't know if you've noticed this, but your skin changes a bit. And some people, their skin tans really quickly because they've been in the sun quite a bit. And I think that's kind of an analogy for the chronic training effect, that you can change your body so that you can train more, and you'll go. The analogy would be if you go brown quick rather than getting burnt.
Yeah.
And the burning would be overtraining. Whereas getting a tan is kind of what you're trying to achieve, if that makes sense.
I like that analogy. So it's getting the balance of, if you've got a band that you can train in, staying below, you won't get a tan.
Yeah, you don't want to get sunburned.
In the middle, you get a nice tan. Above it, you'll get burnt.
You want to get as brown as you can without getting burnt.
Yeah. So you must have got really nice and brown then in that time to then come back and run that time at Vitality.
Yeah, I guess it helps. So yeah, and also I guess I'm used to. I've still got my old training diaries, and you've got the record figures and stuff, and I was thinking this today almost, that if you put in training like that, all of a sudden you're not even going hard. Some of these paces, like in cycling, I do quite a few of my long. I think my best kind of long steady ride is like a 3.5 hour ride at 280 watts.
Wow.
And now 280 watts for me now would be, I could probably handle it for 20 minutes, and it would seem like an interval. If you put in that kind of training volume, you get so fit that you're not even going hard anymore.
Yeah.
And I guess if you look at a lot of these kind of top marathon runners, to be able to do that pace for 2 hours, they're not going flat out. Whereas if we tried to keep up with them, we'd be going flat out.
We'd blow up after 10K.
Yeah. And it is just that massive volume and giving you that kind of huge fitness, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we'll touch on the distance things you mentioned about marathon running. Do you have any inclination of going further than 10K?
I'd like to, and I think with the bike racing, I'd be more suited to it. The problem I've got again is just I don't think I could run that far without getting injured at the moment.
Yeah.
It's
interesting that, because I spoke to when I started running, and I very quickly, within about 12 months, went into marathon running. And some people at my club who were fast 5K, 10K, and you'd say, when are you going to do a marathon? They'd look at me like I was an alien. They said, I'm never going to do one. And you sort of wondered why. And because obviously they're at the top level club athletes at 5K, 10K, training for a marathon then changes your physiology, your physique as well.
Yeah.
So,
and I think maybe when it comes to that as well, with the bike racing as well, a lot of it was biomechanics.
Yeah.
Getting away. I saw a thing the other day saying that almost tendonitis now has been eradicated from professional cycling because of the bike fits and the knowledge of biomechanics. And for me, I think whenever I've been to watch the London Marathon, and you look at the kind of the top 20, top 30 in the race, and to me, their biomechanics look spot on. And I think you probably, people that were as fit as them have been culled, if you like, by having bad biomechanics. So you end up with only the good people with good biomechanics can actually pull that kind of stuff off, I think.
Yeah. Which almost comes back to having the right mechanics, isn't it?
Yeah.
The right running form and so on and so
forth.
But,
so a big kind of category of improvement for me is biomechanics.
What about nutrition? Do you tend to look at that very carefully?
Yeah, so I've been quite heavily into that. I mean, just trying to be healthy. I haven't eaten any refined sugar for it'll be 6 years.
Wow.
On the 8th of December, which is coming up, isn't it? But then, so I've been using that MyFitnessPal app to, because when I started, I've probably gone from about 70 kilos down to about 58 over the last couple of years. Wow. And a lot of that was just being careful with the calories. So using that MyFitnessPal, and with the training on the bike, you have power meters, so you can really get a really accurate measurement of how many calories you're burning training. So quite heavily into that. Slightly restricted calories to control the weight and your fat level. And then also in amongst that as well, keeping the protein level absolute. So I'll be careful with the calories, but I'll make sure from a breakfast I try and get 45 grams of protein, and the last meal of the day 45 grams of protein, just so that even if you're hungry, you've still had enough protein, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're literally targeting the 90 grams of protein a day.
Yeah, I mean, just those 2 meals. Obviously, at lunchtime.
Is that based on your weight? Are you calculating that based on your weight? Obviously, being ex-professional, you're monitoring weight and protein.
Yeah, so you have the macros. I don't know if you've used that app. It gives you the macros.
No, I've not used it.
What they estimate, but I think so. Firstly, with the carbohydrates, there's supposed to be one of the big advances in cycling since I was racing was this eating like 80 to 100 grams of carbohydrate per hour when they're training, whereas in my day it was kind of recommended about 30 grams, and they're almost they're finishing the races now not even hungry, almost full up. And I guess this would apply to marathon running. It's probably quite hard, isn't it, in a marathon to get that much food, but that almost then, if you haven't depleted your carbohydrate stores at all, that last 10 miles of the bike race, or 4 miles of a marathon, you can really light the burners, because you haven't depleted yourself at all.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the big changes they reckon in professional cycling. So yeah, for me, going out training now, trying to have a lot more carbohydrates, so you're coming in from these rides not hungry at all. But the protein, it was an article I read about protein, and he seemed to suggest that having high levels of protein in your breakfast and the last meal of the day as well were important, but by no means still having a decent amount of protein at lunchtime. But just those two, just like I say, trying to keep those absolute, so that even if you go over calories, you're making sure you get that protein.
And is that before or after you start a workout? So with the breakfast, not knowing your daily schedule, work schedule, do you?
Have breakfast and then go training.
And then go training.
Yeah.
So you've got all the nutrients in your body before you go out. So,
and part of that as well is trying to get the proteins from food rather than supplements. So eating, eggs, fish, chicken, rather than, and almost just using the supplements as supplements. So that if you get to the end of the day and you're slightly under, and you haven't got any chicken in the fridge or something, you can take some, but I'd almost try and stay away from supplements as much as possible.
What would be your typical breakfast then to get the 25 grams in? Are you a yogurt man or
eggs? So eggs. I have a couple of boiled eggs, and I've actually bought myself a cholesterol measuring machine.
Okay.
So I keep an eye on my cholesterol, and there's quite a bit of the research now, don't they, think that the cholesterol in your blood doesn't come straight from your dietary cholesterol. So they reckon that eating eggs doesn't raise your blood cholesterol. So, and that's the results I've had. I've been having a couple of boiled eggs in the morning every day for a year now, and my cholesterol's the same.
So the boiled eggs brings in the 25 gram.
2 boiled eggs is probably about 10 grams of protein. And then I have about 100 grams of oats with fruit. And then again, like I say, maybe I'll have a little bit of protein powder, just to top it up.
So is porridge oats type thing?
And I've gone through a patch actually recently of having everything organic, and I haven't actually noticed any difference. And then I started looking into the difference of organic, and I think a lot of it, they can still use pesticides on organic stuff, can't they? They have to be natural pesticides.
Yes, that's right.
And also how thick the skin is on stuff, and if stuff's got quite a thick skin and you're peeling it, then maybe I don't bother with it being organic anymore. I don't know.
It depends what you do for it. I mean, only yesterday I saw Pam Ayres. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Pam Ayres, the poet, and she was making a cake with orange zest. So basically taking the peel, scraping the peel. And then she read what was on the label and the pesticides it was used. Threw it away because she suddenly realised the pesticides, because they have to say by law what it's treated with. And as you say, inside the orange, I think you can get away with it. But if you're going to make, something from the peel of an apple, or for her it was the orange, then it's not a good idea. So how apt you mentioned that. And only yesterday I saw Pam talk about the very same topip.
It makes me wonder about professional cycling teams almost. That they have their own chefs. They have their own chefs. And the amount of money and how professional they are nowadays, I can't see. Maybe this will be the future again of all that. But almost you'd have your own farms, and that they'd grow their own organic food, and they'd know it would have no pesticides on it.
Yeah.
And then almost it would be, you're eating the food from our farm, you're not allowed to eat anything else.
It's funny you said. I think things have gone a full circle. I mean, my dad, bless his cotton socks, is 95 right now. He'll be 96 in January. And we as children, we didn't really appreciate. He had an allotment.
Yeah.
He grew all these vegetables. Yeah. So we had fresh produce every week.
And I think it's the only way you're going to guarantee.
Yeah. And I sort of wonder, is that why he's got to 95, 96? You know,
I looked at an allotment actually a few months ago. And I just think they're quite a bit of work, aren't they?
It is a lot of work, yeah.
To get a decent harvest, I think you'd be down there every day.
He was down there, yeah. When he retired, you know, from the 60s, he was there every day. I mean, he's not there now. I mean, his mobility's dropped off quite a lot. But yeah, it is hard work. But I guess it's, as you mentioned, with the professional cycling teams, you will have a team to do that for you. So yes, it's hard work. But I guess if you want the rewards, we have to put the hard work in, don't we?
Yeah, and I'd be interested
or you pay someone to do that.
I'd be interested as well if they did research into if it actually makes you quicker.
Yeah,
and how much, if it makes any, you know, if it's a fraction of a percent or what.
Yeah, it's one of those classics, and I think it was discussed in the class, wasn't it? Is, you know, the 80-20 or 95-5. I think a lot of focus is on the 5 because that's the sexy stuff, you know, the marginal gains.
Yeah.
Whereas people forget the basics, you know, of the, you know, going back to basics of, you know, training to a mileage that's comfortable, not what people think you should be doing, and also recovering well, sleeping, and it's the sleep that's one of the key things. Which
sleep and the protein. Yeah.
I mean, I certainly noticed when I'd be out on camps that the fast 2:30 runners are the ones who slept the most. Those are the ones who are running in 4 hours without partying. Now, whether that's the partying made them slow and the sleeping, but you know, it's different things. But speaking of partying, are sort of loosely related, but going back to the cycling and nutrition is quite essential. I think there's been, certainly in the running world, a lot of things going on, and only with the Olympics only having just passed, with people finding things in their supplements which they say wasn't in there. How can we say, you know, a few extras?
Yeah.
You'd experienced in your time, didn't you, Phil, where you were racing professionally and being beaten by people. I think you had a statistic that you've later found that 25 of those people who were beating you have now admitted to or been busted.
Yeah, they've been caught. Yeah. So it's funny, back in the day when we were racing, I remember there was a good friend of mine, a guy, Robin Seymour. He was Irish national champion. And I think the equivalent for him, he was kind of at the Irish equivalent of Steve Redgrave. I think he had been to the most Olympics at the time. I may be wrong on that, but him and me used to have quite heated debates about it. And he'd be like, "Oh, I'm telling you, they're all on drugs." And I'd be like, "Oh, you don't know that. You don't know that."
You thought he was a bit of a cynic, did you?
Yeah, and I guess it's a hard thing. Is if you start believing that, I think that's when people get tempted into doing it. And yeah, like you say, so since then I was 57th was my best World Cup result.
Yeah.
And then since then, quite a few of them, probably 20-25 of them have been busted for drugs. Even at the time, so I remember in 2004, the last Olympics before the World Cup, the last World Cup before the Olympics was won by the then world champion, the Belgian guy called Philip Meerhager. Right. And he failed for EPO at that race and was disqualified, banned. But it was funny for me, I guess, as well. A good friend of mine was the British national champion, a guy called Paul Lazenby. And as a junior, he had got a bronze medal in the world champs as a junior, and he had beaten Philip Meerhager. I think Meerhager was fourth or fifth. And we always used to talk, you know, Meerhager was world champion then, and the highest Paul could get in a World Cup was like 25th.
Yeah.
So you kind of got that idea. I guess looking back now, they call it the high octane days of cycling, don't they?
Yeah.
And so when I was racing, there was people did cross over to road racing. So there's Michael Rasmussen and Ryder Hessel. So Michael Rasmussen went on to win the polka dot jersey in the Tour de France. Ryder Hesseljow went on to win the Giro d'Italia, and they've both been banned for drugs.
Wow. How does that make you feel, you know, now, or just, well, you know, it's all gone?
I guess you feel a little bit robbed of, like I said earlier on, that if you go to the Olympics, you're kind of a hero forever. And if you don't, you're a kind of bike bum. That part of the whole idea of it was you were trying to find out how good you could have been, trying to find out how good you could be. Yeah. And you've probably been robbed of finding out how good you could be. Yeah. I kind of understand it in a way, just the level. We did a stage race in Belgium once called the Tour of Brabant Wallon. It was a mountain bike stage race, that was. And it was the first time racing in Belgium of how competitive it was, that people would pull your jersey. If you went past someone, they'd be pulling you back, and real kind of dirty racing. And,
wow. And pulling your jersey on the bike.
Yeah. And almost to the point where it gets to like fisticuffs. And it was that competitive. And I think at this kind of World Cup level, it was that competitive that I actually had a slight disagreement with someone last year about it. And they were a school teacher and they were giving a talk, and it was about a marathon. And the guy had come through the feed station in the marathon, taken a drink, and then knocked all the other drinks off the table so no one else could have one.
I saw that.
And they were saying, "Oh, what an arse!" And everyone was saying, "Yeah, this is terrible." And it was a real example of how he shouldn't be. And I was like, "Yeah, he should have broken the table and broken the people's legs who are giving the other people water." It's that kind of attitude of,
wow.
It's kind of like
doing everything to try and win.
That competitive. It's like a race within the race almost. Of they'd do anything, absolutely. It gets to that level. People have given up their whole life, haven't they?
Yeah.
They'd absolutely do anything to beat you. It's absolutely all-out war. And like I say, almost if there was no rules, they'd be killing each other,
Well, I mean, I've seen stuff on the track. You see things at World Championships and Olympics, but it's not like what it was back in the 70s, 80s. But even now, occasionally, you get people, getting spiked or whatever. Not intentionally, but, there's a lot of cupping and shoving and barging.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess if their livelihood depends on it, and as you say, getting to the Olympics is one thing, but getting that gold medal is the icing on the cake, And
I guess as well, if you're racing people from poorer backgrounds, I guess in those days, the Soviet Union and stuff like that, it's a chance for these people to make more money than they could dream of. And I think maybe the UCOs, the governing body for cycling, haven't. I guess it's this pain and pleasure thing, isn't it? That until the penalties are bad enough, the chances are you're better off doing it.
I know.
I think they need to make the pay. So for example, even now, the money the top guys are making. If you feel like you could definitely get away with it, you kind of set up a system where the pleasure outweighs the pain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the question always is, because I followed the Tour de France as a kid. Whilst I'm not an out-and-out cyclist, and I believed the story of Lance Armstrong. And even when all the allegations were coming out, I was on his side, saying there's no way that someone who would have recovered from cancer and is doing all this goodwill, all this charity, would cheat. I never believed that, and obviously only when he confessed that it came out. So if he never confessed, it would have never come out, because, despite the UCI knowing, my understanding is the UCI knew and other people knew.
Yeah.
The fact that he never admitted it, it's the innocent till proven guilty. Even though the proof was there, they still didn't say he was guilty.
I think if you go back and look, like I think, is it the top 20 in every Tour de France? That everyone that was on the podium, I think the top 20 in each one that he beat have all failed drugs tests as well.
Yeah.
I guess, like you say, from inside the race, he wouldn't consider himself as cheating.
No. It's
kind of this from an outsider's point of view.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a little bit of naivety there as well, that there's this kind of opinion that you've got some kind of Wally who's just taken a load of drugs and won the Tour de France. Whereas in actual fact, he's probably the most professional person you could ever imagine,
Because it takes, I guess, discipline, as you say, being professional on that. But for yourself, going back to yourself, Phil, with the running, going forward, what are your plans going forward? You've literally blitzkrieged the running world by coming in, within 12 months, going from almost 21 minutes to a little over 16 and a half minutes in your 5K.
Yeah.
33. What was your first 10K time? Did you actually race a 10K when you got started?
I did a 10K last year. Yeah, 37:10 was my first.
Okay, so your first one was 37. So your
Yeah.
first one was already faster than me. I'd love to run 37:10 in a couple of weeks' time. I think I'd win my age category on that. But yeah, so what's your plans for yourself, Phil? You know, you're enjoying your running.
I think I've said this before. I think it will be maybe if I haven't set a PB in a year. So, like I was saying earlier on about this fun of getting quicker and quicker and quicker.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes the training fun. And maybe like say with my age and it being new, running being new to me, I'll get to that level where I've got as quick as I can get. And then maybe I'll chill out a bit.
Chill out a bit.
Yeah, again, maybe it's the thing again, just finding out how quick you can get, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, as you'll find out, Phil, a lot of the masters, as I alluded, is you've got the 5-year groups.
Yeah. So as you go up, when you're the first year in that group. So when I hit 50, if I've got a couple of years, if I can get quicker, going to 50 and then
hit it with a bang and then start taking those trophies there. But I'm sure you'll be absolutely brilliant. But I'm going to finish off with the Fast, 5 and Furious. So a bit of light-hearted stuff, Phil.
Yeah.
In terms of, and there's no right or wrong answer, by the way, Phil. And I've not told you. So anyone who's watching this, we hadn't spoken beforehand, so he doesn't know what the questions are. So they're sort of related, unrelated, and totally random as well. But so there's no right or wrong answer. So I'll ask you a question. It's either A or B. So you know which one. So question 1 would be: what do you find harder? What would you find harder, a fast 5K or a 10K?
A fast 5K, I think.
Fast 5K, very good. Twix or Mars bar?
Twix.
I like it. Trail bike or TT bike, TT road bike?
At the moment, a TT bike.
Oh,
people hate me for that.
Yeah. So what would you say is harder to train in pouring rain or strong winds?
Pouring rain.
Pouring rain. And last but not least, Nike or Adidas?
Nike.
I like it. Very good. All I can say, Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thanks for having me.
No doubt we'll have you back on and you can tell us the progress of how you've been progressing through that, because it's absolutely astonishing how you've arrived on such low mileage. You say low mileage, and yet running incredibly fast times based on, you know, obviously the fitness that you'd gained from being a professional cyclist, which is great to see. And all I can say, thank you so much for your time coming on here. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you and your family a fantastic Christmas and New Year.
Same to you.
And we'll catch up very soon.
No, thanks for having us on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Phil. And thank you to everybody for watching this all the way through. By all means, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. And I'll see you all very soon. So thanks again, Phil. And we'll see you all very soon. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Right.